Hey, Composing Gloves here, and today we're going to be talking about the piano roll. So I'm going to assume that you know the basics of the piano roll, but let's just cover a couple things just as a really fast refresher. And we're going to be talking about, if you're curious about what we're going to be learning about workflow, orchestral workflow, using multiple MIDI outs to control different instruments, and also trap using piano. I'm just going to show you all sorts of pretty much anything I know about the piano roll. I'm going to try and do in this video, and I'm going to do it as quickly as I can. So I'm going to assume that you know, if you click, you get notes. If you have a long note and you want a short note, once you write one short note, there's no freaking reason why you should ever be dragging down another long note unless I guess there is a reason. If it makes sense to do that, then do it. But this is what I mean. If I want another short note, I just click this and I'll write short notes. If I want this, I have long notes. If I want a note in between, then I'll just resize it to what I want. And then I have notes that are all that length. So there's no reason for me to, and some DAWs will, like for example, Pro Tools, every time I want to write a new note, unless I'm duplicating notes, like deliberately selecting notes and hitting Control B a bunch of times, I can't just write down notes that are that length anymore. So some DAWs, they're just not friendly towards that sort of method right now. So that's one thing that makes FL really fast. You can hold down Shift on the right side of your keyboard to cut notes super quickly. I believe if you have your mouse over something, you just hit insert. Yeah. If you have your mouse over it and hit insert, it will also cut it, but it will be off the grid. So that may or may not be something cool. I also believe, yeah, if you hold down Control G, this is one I don't use that much, but I know it's a thing. If you hold down Control G over selected notes, you can merge them into one note. They like glob back together again. You heal them. The notes are happy because they've been healed. Okay, so now let's talk about slide notes, which are a really cool thing. Slide notes are only supported by FL Studio's native stuff. If we put down a note and we write it short, this note's gonna play, and when it reaches this note, it's gonna slide for the duration of the note, and then after this note ends, this span of time will be at this pitch. Let me show you. And they use this all for all sorts of stuff. So I'm not gonna be talking about this in too much detail. You can mess around with it on your own, but you see how it stays that note? If we make it long, it's gonna take a way longer time to reach that note, and this note is tied to the note that it slid from. So if we add in a new note here, and I know it's a slide note because I have this little triangle here. If I don't want that, I'm going to shift double click and I can take away the slide, or I can come up here and get rid of the triangle up here. There's also portamento. If you know what portamento is, then I'll talk about that too. But anyways, if we add a new note, and I don't want a slide note, so I'm going to put that there. You see how it didn't affect, the slide note did not affect this. This was triggered as a new note. So as soon as this note ends, whatever the slide note was doing, it's dead too. So anyways, that's slide note 101. You can do portamento. Portamento is a pitch bend. It basically slides the pitch at the end of the note. So the end of this note and the beginning of this note will have a pitch bend up to it. So that's pretty cool. If you're wondering how to deselect stuff like that, it's just Control D. So another thing that you should be aware of, I have this really cool option. If you hit F11 and then go to your General tab, we see that we have this click and hold special gestures functions. If you turn that on, you get special gesture functions. So if I click, and right now I get that, right? But if I right click and hold, I get the cut tool. That's pretty cool. So that comes in handy. I prefer to use Shift because it automatically brings that up. But there's another thing you do. If I right click and hold, it will make it into a slide note. If I click and hold on top of a note, it will duplicate that note. That duplication feature I feel is redundant though. I can do that just by clicking. But the slide note thing is very handy because I don't like coming up here and shift double clicking, or not shift double clicking. You just need to double click. If you just double click, it'll bring it up. And it'll bring up these properties. Now these properties are really handy. So let's say that we're going to talk about this in a second, but let's say that you have a bunch of notes written out, right? And we see here that we have down here, we have this velocity section that we're going to talk about in a second. It's very, very simple stuff, but we're going to be going over some additional workflow things and why you might want to do things certain ways. So let's say that, oh crap, I want to change a couple things to this group of notes. So I'm going to hit Control A to select all the notes and Shift click. This brings up my notes properties selection. Now you notice something disappears when you do this. You cannot change the color of a bunch of notes at the same time. This is super annoying, so you can't change them. What you can do, it doesn't work. If you can do that, if someone has figured out a way to do that, let me know, because I would really, really like to know how to do that. and for reasons that I think you'll see later. But anyways, you can change the panning, the velocity, and the release, mod X, mod Y, REL. I believe that's the release. Yeah, note release, and various other settings here. So if you want to change them to all these groups, alternatively, you come down here and these. Okay, so let's talk about this. So you have these little, like, I don't know, bird type deals. They look like birds. They look like a little head with an enormous beak. If you shorten it, they get shorter. There you go. It's more like, I don't know. It's like a weird looking ostrich deal. Okay, so anyways, what it is if you turn this down or up, it'll change the velocity of the note. And this can be really important if you're using like Contact or something that uses velocity to trigger different samples. For example, shreddage, a lower velocity note does not mean softer. A lower velocity note means trigger a different sample, like a muted guitar sample versus up here it'd be like unmuted or whatever. So that's something that's really, really handy dandy. You can come in here and you have control over panning, release, modulations, X, Y, da, 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 da. You also have channel controls. So there's two ways to automate in FL Studios, and I use them for different things. So say, for example, I have a string section loaded up. So I'm going to give you an example because that's the best way to do things. So I'm going to load up a string section. Da, 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 da. Or you know what? I'm going to load up something from Spitfire because that's the best examples. So I'm going to load up a Spitfire thing. And one thing, is it loading? Okay, it is loading. It's going to take a little bit to load. But one thing that's unique to this is an automation clip. I'm assuming you know what those are from earlier videos in just my FL12, how to make your first song in FL12 series. Again, it's in the playlist. But anyways, you have automation clips, but you have this other type of automation, which is like more like automation lanes in other DAWs, except for that there's not really a way to duplicate it. But I'm sure there is. I just don't know about it. But it allows you to draw in curves and stuff. And I prefer to do it for orchestral writing because automation clips are not streamlined. See, the great advantage to event automation is that they're embedded in the patterns. So as you move around events in the patterns, you can move it while interacting with your notes immediately. I'm going to show you this in just a second. A lot of other DAWs have this almost as their exclusive means to editing something, like Logic. I'm not sure now. I've not really used Logic that much, but I believe that that's like the way you do automation. It's a very different deal. Most DAWs, not single out Logic in this case, but most DAWs have just automation lanes. They only have really one way to do it. FL is unique in that you can automate something for a set period of time, and then whatever the levels are, that's the levels. It's just weird the way they do it. Other DAWs do that too. It's just they show you that the level continues on forever. I like the fact that it didn't take up screen space. It's a very different sort of way of thinking about getting something done. But anyways, I'm going to write out a line here, and I'm going to use, and this is hooked up to my contact right here. So these guys. So I'm going to use contact 1, and we cover zip channels in the previous video, I believe, on the channel rack. Name it strings just so I know what I'm touching. And I also have a preset for this. What is this? Strings main? Yeah, high strings main. So I'm going to name this. Oh, something that you should know about. If you want to keep multiple plugins open at the same time, hit Alt and then click the window, and you see how they are now both open. If you don't do that, they'll both close. Really annoying. So now I can see her, and I'm like, oh yeah, high strings main. So I go to high strings. Oh, I have strings high 1. So this is it. Anyways, this is a plugin. I cover it in my free plugins video. It's specific for Contact, so don't worry about it too much. But what it can do is, normally in Contact, I have to go through these key switches to do things. I can utilize the MIDI channel colors, which we'll talk about in a second. You see, I have these crazy names. This has to do with the way this thing works. But it has some implications as well, because you notice, if we go over here to our piano roll for Harmer, we have these guys. So let's talk about this real quick while I'm on the subject. So you have all these different color notes, and these can have a number of implications. I talk about them in the playlist where we can use them to identify the channel, the parent channels. If you don't know about that, there's a very kind of useful way of identifying where your drums are in your pattern clips. But most people don't use them just because it's another level of organization that isn't always that necessary, but it can be super helpful if you're in like a big project or you need someone else to understand your project. So you can use these separate colors to do that. These essentially at this point are not assigned to anything specific, so they'll react to the main channel of MIDI. But these other channels have specific things. So if you write notes in these channels, they will do what it says they will do on these. So you see we have filter frequency and ARP priority. These will affect these processes. Now, they change depending on what you're doing. So for example, I have contact and I'm using this plugin that will, what it does is it takes these articulations and instead of having to click notes down here to change them, so you see if I click down here, it's changing the articulations, I can route it using this plugin. And now when I'm writing in the piano roll, I can use the various channels of MIDI to get my different articulations. So this, if I write in this note and this color, I'm going to be writing with that articulation. And if I write in this color, I'll get that articulation. And so that's really cool. And you see that they change colors. So it's a really, really big deal. And of course, oh, you know what I just said? Channel, if you change the channel of it, you can still see the drums and stuff, and the notes will change. I'm not sure why that would be super useful to you. But anyways, let's talk about now. So anyways, that's these color things. So they basically can be used to configure to control different things. And so I've never actually tried to set this up with Harmor. I never really usually come in here to touch it, but I do know that it's here. So if I ever wanted to mess with it, there are some things in here I could further mess with. But I use it all the freaking time with Contact. So let's talk about those event automations and why I prefer them for this. So let's say I have some long things, right? Let's say I've got some long flowing D major to just a D. Okay, so I'm going to hold down Control and hold Alt to snap off the grid and move them just a little bit off. And I'm going to move this guy over. I'm going to move this over. Okay, so let's say I've got this going on, right? And we'll put a B here. It'll sound very nice. And we hit L to switch to pattern play. I mean, like right now it's like whatever. But what we want to do is we want to make it like fade in even nicer and slower and fade out. Maybe have some crescendos. Add some life back into this. So I could, now I'm not going to explain this because it has to do with MIDI CCs and the standard and all that. And it's already been routed. And if you really want to know, you can go into, what is it? Modules, auto. Here you have it. If you go to browse parameters, FL Studios will show you its own browse parameters. Here it is. These are just a list of a whole bunch of things you can hook up. There's a standard. If you come over here, here's some things like, anyways, I'm not going to talk about that, but that's there. There is a standard to it, and a lot of things are already preset. So basically, all I'm saying is when I move this knob, the expression knobs moves here. And there's a corresponding deal in here that allows it. Like you see, CC1 is always the mod wheel. Well, it's supposed to be the mod wheel. And that controls the dynamic switch. Most libraries will take advantage of aspects of this. Sometimes they won't use dynamics, they'll use the expression, which is, the expression one is like, it's 11. It's down here, expression controller. It's covered by me, I just realized this. So if I move this up, you see we have all these different ones. Expression is number 11, and then 1 is the mod wheel. We have breath controller. These are just standard things. So if you want to hook things up, the piano sustain pedal is one that most people want, and that is on 64, damper pedal sustain. And they have other pedals, soft pedal, sostenuto, stuff like that. But anyways, basically, I can automate this by creating an automation clip, but I don't want to do that. I'm going to edit events in the piano roll. What this does is, and now I don't have a friendly line graph. I heard I was reading on the FL Studio forums, Loop Talk, and that's on their list of stuff they want to do. But they're always doing so much. Like, I'm always stoked. They're really heavy into development all the time. But one of their things is, I think they're going to add a line editor down here, which I would love. I would think that's so cool. I just hope they don't get rid of automation clips. Let's make sure that these things are still available. But basically, I can draw on lines, and now I can right-click and draw on lines like this. But that's kind of boring. If I left-click will bring in these. Right-click will bring in the nice smooth line. So I can draw in a very nice fade in, and then like a nice fade out. Now these are kind of long chords too, so let's make them shorter. And now you can't, this is what I'm saying is I'm not sure of a way to Control D, Control V. See, the events, I'm not totally sure how to, you can open up the event editor. I believe you could do it in there. But that's like, I'm talking about being able to do it in here. And I haven't messed in the event editor in so long. When I was first learning how to make dubstep, that's where I went. But basically now we can do this and like this. And, get rid of that. And it's controlling it. This is just much handier for me to work with and have my hands on right there. So that's that. Now, if we come in here, there's a couple other things. Okay, so let's move out of the world of orchestral, but that's one of the main reasons I would go in here. Another thing you can do is if we go in here, tools, I know it's in here somewhere. It's been so long since I've come in here though that I don't know. There's an event editor somewhere in here though. Okay, something that you're probably gonna want to set up for your piano roll is you're probably gonna want to set it up. So let's say you have that. And now if I go into my piano roll here, you see that I can see the notes that I have on that channel on the same pattern. If I switch patterns, there's no data there, so it doesn't matter. But if I go back, oh wait, I was on pattern 6. So if I go back, so how do you get that? Well, it is controlled by going to helpers, ghost channels, or Alt V. I don't know why you'd ever want to turn it off, but ghost channels is what that does. Now, occasionally you can have things like, I've never messed with editable ghosts. I wonder what that does. But a ghost channel is basically, it lets you see the notes happening on other channels. I use it all the time. You do see percussion notes and stuff though, so you got to like kind of, you still need to know theory. You're no cheating that. Like you better know your freaking theory if you really want to take advantage of this. People think that, oh, look at this, I can cheat. And the other thing that thinks they can cheat, and something I'm not a fan of, is they have this stamp tool. And you can come up here and you can automatically write down like scales and stuff. And people will write out these whole scales right on the side. And I teach music theory, and there are people who come in all the time and we're learning about like root position, part writing, and we're moving in a scale, and they will do exactly what people do here. They will get like a scale about, oh shoot, we're moving in a minor scale. Here, let me write out my minor scale. So you guys, you'll come in here. Where is it? Minor, minor, major. Where's Aeolian? It's just labeled as Aeolian, I guess. Anyways, it comes in here and you say, oh, look, these are the notes I'm going to work with. Then you proceed to start writing, right? And you look at this. This is such good luck getting chromatic movements. Like you're limiting yourself. I'm always yelling at people who write out their notes too before they start writing on staff papers. Not just people with MIDI. It's like this. And some people on YouTube endorse this method. And I'm like, no, it's not a good method, because then you're gonna be thinking all this time, you think you're focusing about music, but you end up just slowing yourself down so much. Just having the crap memorized and just knowing where things are. Take the time. If you're serious, you're gonna do this. If you're not serious, if you're just doing this for fun, then by all means just go ahead and do that. But if you really want to get good and be able to just do that, knowing these things, it makes your life so much easier. And also, if you work like that, you're limiting yourself. You'll hit a roof. You won't be able to get through more advanced levels of theory. So you need to have that stuff. So I recommend hardcore music theory. I don't recommend using any sort of cheating methods that try to talk around how to do things. You should just learn how to do it. Like that's that simple. Anyways, so we have that. We have these different note colors. So let's talk about some of the EDM aspects of this. So let's say that I'm working on my snare, right? And I've got, so that's ghost channels in a nutshell. So super useful. And it applies, I'm just ripping on this because I don't like it. But there are a couple things in here that I do like. They have the slide for like, they have these figures basically. And if we put in like a flam slow, which is a snare, it's a drum thing. They'll have flam taps and stuff. You see that they write them in for you. So they'll move things slightly off the grid, and they're grouped together. These notes are. To ungroup them, you hit Alt G and it ungroups them. Similar to how you can group things in here, you can hold Control G and group notes here. Or is it Shift G? I think it's Shift G. Yeah, Shift G will group them inside here so they go together. But anyways, you can load up these figures. I prefer to just write my figures out. So let's say you're working on your snare, right? And you're working at C5 because that'll be the correct pitch. And then you want to have a roll right here. Or maybe you're working on your hi-hat. So you're working on your hat, and we make our hat shorter because we don't like a super long hat. And now you want to have a roll right here. So we're going to chop it. And what we're going to do is we're going to hit Alt-U. And it brings up the piano roll chopper. And now you can have time multiples. You can change the levels, the velocity as it rolls in and out. You can get a little roll in there. And you can even do something like that. Oh yeah, left click and drag will also allow you to draw the lines, which is similar to the event editor. So if you're working on like a trap line or something, you can have that. There's a couple other nifty tools in here. We have file. You can open up MIDI files. You can even export a score. You can export sheet music from the MIDI. I tried it once. I was doing it on my laptop. It took forever. And I didn't want to even do it again. I did like one measure. So I don't even remember if it did anything weird. I can't remember. But yeah, apparently maybe they were going this direction at one time. I really hope they go back to this direction. I would use it. They should just kick Cubase's button, right? Like the dream editor. I've never used Cubase, so I can't really talk. But I know Cubase. I just say that because I know that they have a really, really good one. At least from what I saw, it looked like sort of the best one at the time. I know Notion. I think that's how you say it. Notion, whatever it is, came out with Studio One, and they have a thing. They're trying to do something similar. I just wish FL had one. I like Finale so far the most out of the ones that I've used. Okay, so yeah, you have transport, stuff like that, tools. Now these are the ones that you'll probably get into. They have an arpeggiator tool and a strum tool, a flam tool, a claw machine. I recommend that you just come in here and mess with these. The ones I use the most by far are the ARP tool and the chop tool, that one I just showed you, the Alt U tool. But they have other tools that allow you to do interesting things with levels. And sometimes you're going to want to know these things, like say you're programming a launch pad using the piano roll, which is the thing that maybe one day you're going to try and do. Knowing about these tools is very useful. You'll be, maybe not for composition, but for lighting programming and stuff and sending complex MIDI signals, that could be a very, very handy tool. So let's talk about the ARP tool. So if you hit Alt A, it'll bring up the ARP tool. Now we need actually multiple notes for this to work, and I will use a variation on this. There are two ways to really do this. One is you write it out. I prefer the write it out method the most by far, but occasionally I don't. So I'll come in here. They have an arpeggiator in here. I'll let you go look this up in the FL12 effects. Look up in that playlist on my YouTube channel. Look up the one about MIDI effects, and I will talk about the arpeggiator. The other way though is you write out a chord, and I'm gonna also turn it down because I want to hear what I'm doing while I'm working on it. So, and it won't let me start playing once I've opened up the menu. So I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna open up. I'm gonna hit Alt A and then begin to mess with it. I'll show you a little bit of what it has in it. So we hit Alt A, and then you have these levels. You can change the panning, of course, velocity levels, the range. So you go up 3 or whatever. It's really handy. And then they have these patterns. You come in through here. You have 2-note patterns. You have 3-note patterns. So I like that one. So let's go with that one. So we're going to open that one. And then we're going to, we also have gate, which is really handy. It would be even cooler if you could automate it. But you can't. At least not yet. So, ooh, look at this. We got this going on. That's pretty cool, right? But if you move one note, Oh, they did that. It used to be that they would all move, and it was super annoying. But you can edit individual notes. That's handy. One thing that I haven't pointed out yet is you can do stuff like this by clicking on this button on things you have selected. Whoops, Control-Alt-Z. Okay, cool. So anyways, those are some things that you can do in the piano roll. You got a little more than I meant to say, but see, now if we select multiple notes, we get this option that allows us to drag it out in sort of this unusual way. If you want to make triplets, you need to change your snap setting. I didn't explain this stuff because I consider it like really basic, so I assumed you already know some of this stuff. So I'm just sort of saying stuff that as I found out, I was like, whoa, that's something I wish I had known. So yeah, you also have your tools menu here as a quick get at. LFO I've used a little bit, but not enough to like really use it. And actually, I have used strum. So if you have like a cruddy guitar library, sometimes it's just because the way they're like finger picked or whatever. But you can sometimes get an okay convincing sound by using strum. So if we rolled out a chord, I'm gonna go into line, and we just like duplicated a bunch. And let's say that we want to strum it. So I'm going to hold down Shift and Control to select these. I'm going to make these strum. So I'm going to hit Alt S. And now I have this strumming option. And basically it'll offset the notes a little bit. Just like when you hit the strings, you'd hit the one string a little bit after the others. And so, see, it's kind of interesting. We can change the tension. I'll let you mess with this on your own time. It could sound really good though. Right now I'm using a synth, so it's not the best example, but anyways, you can get something that's kind of cool. So that's the piano roll. If you have a method you really like, I realize there's even more methods. All the same shortcuts that you can do here, like the chopping and stuff. When I edited the loops, you can do here. One other quick thing that you may want to know is you can drag onto a piano roll. Let's say that Harmer is going to be the modulator for some sort of vocal carrier, but so you're going to write out some MIDI to make this thing happen. So let's just set this up real quick. So I already have a carrier channel, so I'm going to send this to channel 101. Harmer is on 17, so I'm just going to control click here. This is a template. I have a video on templates in this series, so just go check it out. So it's modulating right now. It's going into our vocoder. Now we need some sort of a carrier source. So let's just grab a voice or whatever. So let's come over here to speeches.
The confrontation was not created by the police.
Sure, let's say that we want to vocode that for some reason. So we have this going on, right? And now we're going to send this to a MIDI channel, and then we're going to hit control and route it only to this channel. So now we've got our carrier and our modulator. So it's coming through our vocoder, but our vocoder's got like nothing going on right now because we have no modulator telling it to do a thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to send a modulator through. So we're going to go to all. We're going to go to our Harmer channel. We'll bring up the piano roll. We're going to write out a couple notes. But right now we're sort of writing out notes arbitrarily, right? And we're going to pattern selector. You should know all that stuff from previous videos. So
Confrontation was not.
now we are vocoding, right? But let's say that I want to know exactly what syllables are hitting where, or syllables. That way I can write out like specific MIDI so that my chords change maybe with the voice. Very, very nice. So there's a very great way to do this. So as I'm writing out my MIDI, I can open up my piano roll, hold down Alt to open up another window without like putting this one somewhere weird. At least I do. I don't think in this case it would have mattered, but sometimes it does. And you simply drag, bang, there it is. And so you could see the waveform and say like, oh, let's say we want to change notes on every single line. So now this, of course, you may need to finagle with where your clip starts here. So it's assuming that we're starting here at the beginning. So I'm going to hit Control D. And then let's say that right here I want to pitch bend. You see how intuitive this is? And so I can change the modulators deal while I'm doing this. Another thing about switching notes here is as I move around, you'll notice that I had this slide note property. I didn't want that, so I clicked on one that didn't have it so I could carry that quality over. And then let's say, I don't know, we'll do something like this. And oh, that's a little too long. Move this one over. And then let's say that for the rest of this, it's weird how it sort of moves down in the background. It goes like this, like just whatever.
The confrontation was not created by.
So this is like more useful for vocals rather than like speech or whatever. But anyways, you can.
The confrontation was not created by.
It'd be interesting to go into the band distribution.
The confrontation was not created by. 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 The confrontation was not created by.
And turn on the sibilance.
The confrontation was. The confrontation was not created by.
Not that much. Not a good idea in this case.
The confrontation was not created by.
And anyways, you get some really cool things. So I have like a tutorial on Vocoding if you want to know more about that. I haven't used it recently. I haven't used it in a while. I think I'm gonna go use it some more, just because it's been a while since I've touched it. If you have any questions, let me know. This is a lot of information, but if you have a thing that you really like to do, drop it in the comments. Maybe it's like your favorite way of working. Subscribe and have a blessed day.